The wind howled through the barren streets of Eldwood, a small coastal town where secrets clung to the air like damp salt. Clara stood at the edge of the cliff, her dark hair whipping against her tear-streaked face, staring into the churning abyss of the ocean below. The jagged rocks at the base seemed to call her name, a cruel invitation she'd been resisting for months. She clutched the letter in her hand, its edges worn from countless readings, its words burned into her soul. It wasn't the wind that made her shiver, it was the betrayal. 2 years ago, Clara had been a different woman. She was 28, radiant, with a laugh that could thaw the iciest hearts. She'd met Daniel at a seaside cafe, where he'd spilled coffee on her sketchbook, stammering apologies as she laughed it off. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes like the stormy sea and a smile that promised safety. They'd fallen into each other effortlessly, as if the universe had conspired to knit their lives together. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and by the following spring, they'd moved into a weathered cottage overlooking the cliffs, a home they'd vowed to fill with love, children, and memories. Clara had never doubted Daniel. He was her anchor, her certainty in a world that had always felt unsteady. She'd grown up in a broken home, her father's affairs leaving her mother a hollow shell, and Clara had sworn she'd never let that poison seep into her own life. Daniel knew this. He'd held her through her nightmares, whispering promises of loyalty into her hair. "I'd die before I hurt you," he'd said once, his voice thick with conviction. She'd believed him. The first crack appeared on a rainy Tuesday in October. Clara had come home early from her shift at the library, her arms full of books and a bottle of wine she'd picked up to surprise Daniel. The cottage was quiet, the kind of stillness that felt heavy rather than peaceful. She'd called his name, her voice echoing off the wooden walls, but there was no answer. His boots were by the door, his coat slung over the chair. He was home. Curiosity tugged at her, and she climbed the stairs to their bedroom. The door was ajar. She pushed it open and froze. Daniel was there, shirtless, his back to her, tangled in the sheets with someone else. The woman's auburn hair spilled across the pillow Clara slept on every night, her bare legs entwined with Daniel's. Time slowed, the world tilting as Clara's breath caught in her throat. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply stood there, invisible, as the man she loved moved with a stranger in their bed. The woman noticed her first. Her gasp jolted Daniel upright, and he turned, his face a mask of shock and guilt. "Clara," he started, but she was already gone, the wine bottle slipping from her hands to shatter on the floor as she stumbled down the stairs. She didn't stop to hear his excuses, didn't wait for the lies she knew would follow. She ran into the rain, her heart splintering with every step. For days, Daniel tried to reach her. He called, left voicemails, showed up at the library with flowers and pleas. Clara stayed with her friend Mara, a no-nonsense woman who'd always distrusted Daniel's charm. "He's a snake," Mara had said, pouring Clara a glass of whiskey. "You deserve better." But Clara didn't want better, she wanted answers. Who was the woman? How long had it been going on? Why had he thrown away everything they'd built? She got her answers 2 weeks later, though not from Daniel. A letter arrived at Mara's house, slipped under the door in the dead of night. The handwriting was unfamiliar, feminine, with a faint scent of lavender clinging to the paper. Clara's hands trembled as she unfolded it. "Clara. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I won't ask you to. My name is Elise. I've been seeing Daniel for 8 months. He told me you were his ex, that you'd left him a year ago. I believed him because I wanted to. I'm not proud of that. But when I saw you that day, standing in the doorway, I knew he lied. I ended it with him that night. I'm writing because you deserve to know the truth. He didn't just betray you with me. There were others. I found messages on his phone, women from town, from the city, even one from overseas. He laughed about it with his friends, said you were too naive to suspect anything. I thought you should know what kind of man he is. I'm leaving Eldwood tomorrow. I can't face you, or him, or this place anymore. I'm sorry for the part I played in your pain. Elise." The letter slipped from Clara's hands, fluttering to the floor like a dead leaf. 8 months. Others. The words clawed at her, tearing open wounds she hadn't known existed. She'd been a fool, blind to the rot festering beneath Daniel's promises. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat by Mara's window, staring into the dark, replaying every moment of their life together, searching for signs she'd missed. The next morning, she went back to the cottage. Daniel was there, sitting at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. He looked up as she entered, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Clara, please," he said, standing. "I can explain." "Don't," she cut him off, her voice cold as steel. "I got a letter from Elise. I know everything." His face strained of color. "Elise? She's lying. She's obsessed with me, trying to ruin us." "Stop." Clara held up a hand, her calm masking the storm inside. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here for my things." He followed her as she packed, begging, crying, swearing he'd change. She didn't respond. She took her clothes, her books, her mother's old necklace, the pieces of herself she could still salvage, and left him standing in the doorway, a broken man she no longer recognized. Clara thought that would be the end of it. She moved into a small apartment above the library, threw herself into work, and tried to rebuild. But betrayal has a way of lingering, a poison that seeps into every crack. She couldn't sleep without seeing Daniel and Elise together. She couldn't walk through Eldwood without wondering which women had been in his arms. The town, once her sanctuary, became a prison of whispers and pitying glances. Months passed, and the pain didn't fade, it hardened. Clara grew thin, her laughter replaced by a quiet bitterness. Mara urged her to leave Eldwood, to start over somewhere new, but Clara couldn't. Not yet. She needed closure, something to quiet the rage gnawing at her heart. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late, the library empty save for Clara sorting books in the dim light. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find a man she didn't recognize, mid-30s, wiry, with sharp features and a nervous energy. "You're Clara, right?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," she said warily. "Who are you?" "Name's Trevor. I've got something you need to see." He handed her a USB drive, his hands trembling slightly. "It's about Daniel." Her stomach twisted. "What is it?" "Just watch it. Alone." He glanced over his shoulder, then disappeared into the night. Clara locked the door and plugged the drive into her laptop. A single video file appeared, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. She clicked it, her pulse racing. The footage was shaky, clearly shot on a phone. It showed a dimly lit bar, the kind Daniel frequented. He was there, leaning against the counter, laughing with a group of men. The camera zoomed in, catching his voice mid-sentence. "Clara still thinks it was just Elise. Poor thing doesn't have a clue." The men chuckled, and Daniel grinned, raising his glass. "Here's to keeping them blind." The video cut to another scene, Daniel in a car with a woman, her face obscured, their hands roaming as they kissed. Then another clip, him slipping into a motel room with someone else. The footage spanned weeks, a montage of infidelity and mockery, each frame a dagger in Clara's chest. The final clip was the worst, Daniel, drunk, slurring to the camera, "She'll never leave me. She's too weak." The screen went black. Clara sat there, numb, the silence roaring in her ears. Weak. The word echoed, igniting something dark within her. She wasn't weak. She'd survived her father's betrayal, her mother's collapse, and now this. She wasn't the fragile thing Daniel thought she was. Over the next week, Clara didn't cry. She planned. She dug into Daniel's life with a precision she hadn't known she possessed. She tracked his routines, his haunts, his secrets. She found the women, some knew about her, some didn't, and pieced together a web of lies that stretched back to the day they'd met. Daniel hadn't just cheated, he'd built a double life, thriving on her trust like a parasite. She could have exposed him. She could have ruined him with that video, let the town tear him apart. But that wasn't enough. Clara wanted him to feel what she'd felt, the helplessness, the humiliation, the shattering of everything he held dear. On a cold March night, she invited him to the cottage. He arrived eager, hopeful, thinking she'd forgiven him. She poured him a drink, her face unreadable, and led him to the cliff's edge under the pretense of talking. The wind was fierce, the ocean a restless beast below. "Clara, I've missed you," he said, stepping closer. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this." She turned to him, her eyes glinting with something he didn't recognize. "Do you remember what you said? That you'd die before you hurt me?" He frowned, confused. "Yeah, I." She pushed him. It was swift, deliberate, her hands firm against his chest. He stumbled, arms flailing, and for a moment, their eyes locked, his wide with terror, hers cold with resolve. Then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness, his scream swallowed by the waves. Clara stood there, the wind tearing at her, until the silence returned. She didn't look down. She didn't need to. She walked back to the cottage, burned the letter from Elise, and erased the USB drive. By morning, she was gone from Eldwood, a ghost slipping into the world beyond. The town searched for Daniel, but the sea kept its secrets. Some whispered he'd left, others that he'd fallen. Clara's name faded from their lips, her story buried with the man who'd broken her. Years later, in a distant city, Clara sat by a window, sketching the skyline. She was older, quieter, her hands steady as they moved across the page. The pain hadn't left her, it had become part of her, a scar she carried with pride. She'd trusted once, and it had nearly destroyed her. She'd never trust again. And somewhere, in the depths of the ocean, Daniel's bones rested, a silent testament to the weight of betrayal. Clara's new life began in a city called Ashmere, a sprawling maze of steel and glass far from the salt-stained cliffs of Eldwood. She rented a cramped attic room above a butcher's shop, the air thick with the tang of blood and the hum of traffic. By day, she worked as a freelance illustrator, her sketches sharp and haunting, earning her a quiet reputation among local galleries. By night, she sat by her window, staring into the neon-lit void, her mind drifting back to that cliff, that push, that scream swallowed by the sea. She'd left no trace in Eldwood. The cottage was sold through a proxy, her belongings shipped in unmarked boxes. She'd cut her hair short, dyed it a muted brown, and traded her soft sweaters for angular jackets, a transformation so complete that even Mara, her fiercest ally, wouldn't have recognized her. Clara had buried her old self with Daniel, and the woman who emerged was a stranger, even to herself. But freedom came with a price. Sleep eluded her, replaced by dreams of Daniel's face, sometimes pleading, sometimes laughing, always falling. She'd wake gasping, her hands clawing at the sheets, the weight of what she'd done pressing against her ribs. She didn't regret it. Regret was for the weak, and she'd promised herself she'd never be weak again. Still, the act lingered, a shadow she couldn't outrun. Ashmere was supposed to be a fresh start, but betrayal has a way of following you. Clara kept to herself, avoiding friendships, dodging the curious glances of neighbors. She trusted no one, her heart a locked vault. Yet the city had its own secrets, and they began to seep into her life like damp rot. It started with a package. 6 months after she'd settled in Ashmere, a small, unmarked box appeared on her doorstep. Inside was a photograph, grainy, taken from a distance, of her standing on the cliff that night, her silhouette stark against the stormy sky. Her breath caught, her fingers trembling as she turned it over. Scrawled in red ink were 2 words, "I know." Panic clawed at her. She burned the photo in the sink, watching the flames devour her past, but the message lingered. Someone had seen her. Someone knew. She scoured her memory. Had there been a witness? A fisherman on the water, a hiker in the woods? She'd been so sure the night was hers alone, the wind and waves her only accomplices. Days turned to weeks, and no more packages arrived. Clara told herself it was a fluke, a cruel prank, but doubt gnawed at her. She began to notice things, a man lingering too long outside the butcher's, a car idling across the street, its driver obscured. Paranoia crept in, tightening its grip with every shadow, every sound. She stopped sketching, her hands too unsteady, her mind too fractured. Then came the second blow. One evening, as she flipped through a local paper, a headline stopped her cold: Eldwood man's disappearance linked to foul play. The article was sparse, speculative. Daniel's body hadn't been found, but a fisherman had reported seeing a figure on the cliff that night, followed by a splash. The police were reopening the case, chasing rumors of a jilted lover. Clara's name wasn't mentioned, but the words "mysterious woman" jumped out, a noose tightening around her throat. She threw the paper into the trash, her pulse hammering. They wouldn't find her. She'd covered her tracks, hadn't she? But the past was a relentless hunter, and Clara was its prey. The third sign came in the form of a voice. She was at a corner store, buying coffee, when she heard it, low, familiar, a ghost from Eldwood. "Clara?" She froze, her hand hovering over the coins in her wallet. She turned slowly, and there he was, Trevor, the wiry man who'd given her the USB drive. His sharp features were the same, but his eyes were harder, shadowed with something she couldn't place. "Trevor," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "What are you doing here?" He smirked, a thin, knowing curve of his lips. "Could ask you the same. You look different." "I needed a change," she said, her tone flat. "Why are you in Ashmere?" "Business," he replied, too vague, too casual. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Heard about Daniel. Funny how he just vanished." Her stomach twisted, but she held his gaze. "People leave all the time." "Not like that." His eyes flicked over her, searching. "You know, I always wondered what you'd do with that video. Guess I got my answer." Clara's blood ran cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't." He leaned in, his breath sour with tobacco. "But if I were you, I'd watch my back. Secrets don't stay buried forever." He left her standing there, the coffee forgotten, her mind racing. Trevor knew, or suspected. Had he sent the photo? Was he the shadow trailing her? She couldn't be sure, but one thing was clear, her sanctuary was crumbling. That night, Clara made a decision. She couldn't wait for the past to catch her. She had to hunt it down first. She tracked Trevor to a rundown bar on the edge of Ashmere, a place reeking of stale beer and desperation. He was there, hunched over a drink, oblivious to her presence. She watched him from a corner booth, her mind spinning with possibilities. Confront him? Silence him? She wasn't a killer, not yet, but the thought flickered, dark and tempting. Before she could act, another figure slid into Trevor's booth, a woman, mid-30s, with auburn hair and a nervous smile. Clara's heart stopped. Elise. The woman from the letter, from her bed, from her nightmares. She was here, in Ashmere, laughing with Trevor like they were old friends. Clara's third life began in a city called Varnal, a grimy industrial sprawl where the air tasted of rust and the sky was perpetually bruised with smoke. She rented a room in a boarding house under the name Lydia Crane, a fiction she'd stitched together from a gravestone she'd passed in Ashmere. Her hair was blonde now, cropped close to her scalp, and she wore glasses she didn't need, a shield against recognition. She worked odd jobs, cleaning offices, sorting mail, anything that paid in cash and asked no questions. Varnal was a place to disappear, and Clara was determined to vanish. But the past is a relentless beast, and Clara's leash on it was fraying. She'd killed twice now, Daniel, Trevor, Elise, and each death had carved something out of her. She didn't feel guilt, not exactly, but there was a hollowness, a void where her old self used to live. She'd catch glimpses of it in mirrors, her eyes, once warm, now flat and unreadable. She didn't sketch, didn't laugh, didn't dream. She existed, a machine fueled by survival and the bitter taste of betrayal. The first months in Varnal were quiet. She kept her head down, her routine mechanical: work, eat, sleep, repeat. She avoided bars, crowds, anyone who might look too closely. But the silence was a lie, a thin veneer over the chaos she'd left behind. She'd check newspapers obsessively, scanning for mentions of Eldwood, Ashmere, or the bodies she'd buried. The world seemed to move on. Daniel's case grew cold, Trevor and Elise's deaths pinned on a botched robbery, but Clara knew better. She'd learned that trust was a trap, and peace was an illusion. The illusion shattered on a Tuesday in November. She was sweeping the floor of an empty office building, the hum of the vacuum her only company, when she found it, a folded note tucked under a desk. Her name, Clara, was written on it in that same red ink, the handwriting sharp and familiar. She tore it open, her breath shallow. "You can't outrun me. I see you." The room tilted. She dropped the broom, her hands shaking as she reread the words. It was impossible. Trevor was dead. Elise was dead. She'd watched their blood stain the ground, felt their pulses fade. Who else knew? Who else had been watching? She burned the note that night, the flames licking at her fingers as she held it too long. She told herself it was a coincidence, a cruel echo, but sleep didn't come. She sat by her window, the city's lights blurring into a haze, and waited for the next sign. It arrived 3 days later, a Polaroid slipped into her mailbox, showing her sweeping that office floor, her face turned away but unmistakable. On the back, in red, "Closer than you think." Clara didn't panic. Panic was for the old Clara, the one who'd trusted, who'd loved. This Clara acted. She packed a bag, left Varnal that night, and took a bus to a town called Marrow's End, a nowhere place nestled in the mountains. She dyed her hair black, traded her glasses for contacts, and became Ellen Voss. She found work at a diner, pouring coffee for truckers and drifters, her face a mask of indifference. But the notes followed. Every few weeks, they'd appear, under her pillow, in her coat pocket, taped to the diner's back door. Always the same red ink, always a taunt, "I'm here. You're mine." No escape. Photos came too, her pouring coffee, her walking home, her sleeping. Whoever it was, they were close, a ghost she couldn't see, a predator playing with its prey. Clara's mind fractured under the strain. She stopped eating, her frame thinning to a sharp edge. She'd sit for hours, staring at the walls, tracing the cracks with her eyes, searching for answers. Was it Mara, her old friend, turned vengeful? A cop from Eldwood, piecing it together? One of Daniel's lovers, seeking retribution? The possibilities gnawed at her, but she had no proof, no face to hunt. She bought a gun, a cheap revolver from a pawn shop, no questions asked. She kept it under her mattress, its cold weight a comfort. She'd killed with a knife, she could kill again. But this enemy was different, faceless, relentless, a shadow she couldn't strike. The breaking point came on a snowy night in February. Clara returned to her rented trailer after a late shift, her boots crunching in the frost, and found the door ajar. Her breath caught, the gun already in her hand as she stepped inside. The trailer was dark, the air thick with a scent she couldn't place, lavender, faint but unmistakable. Her eyes adjusted, and she saw it, a figure sitting at her table, shrouded in shadow. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. The figure leaned forward, the dim light catching a face she hadn't expected. It was a woman, late 40s, gaunt, with graying hair and eyes like chipped ice. She smiled, a thin, cruel twist of her lips. "You don't remember me," she said, her voice low, almost melodic. "But I remember you, Clara." Clara's grip tightened on the gun. "I don't know you. Get out." "Oh, you know me." The woman stood, slow and deliberate, her hands empty but her presence heavy. "I'm Helen. Daniel's sister." The name hit Clara like a punch. Daniel had mentioned a sister once, estranged, living overseas. Clara had never met her, never thought of her. But here she was, a specter from a life Clara had tried to erase. "What do you want?" Clara asked, her aim unwavering. Helen's smile widened. "Justice. You took my brother. You took everything." "He deserved it," Clara spat, the words raw. "He betrayed me. He—" "I know what he was," Helen interrupted, her tone sharp. "A liar, a cheat. But he was mine to judge, not yours. I've been watching you, Clara. Eldwood, Ashmere, Varnal. Every step, every kill. You're a monster now, just like him." Clara's finger hovered over the trigger. "You don't scare me." "I don't need to." Helen stepped closer, unafraid. "I've already won. The police have the video, Trevor's footage. I sent them a copy weeks ago. They're coming for you." Clara's blood ran cold. "You're lying." "Am I?" Helen tilted her head, mocking. "Check the news tomorrow. You'll see." Rage surged through Clara, drowning her fear. She fired, once, twice, the shots deafening in the small space. Helen crumpled, her body hitting the floor with a dull thud, blood pooling beneath her. Clara stood over her, chest heaving, waiting for regret that never came. She didn't wait for dawn. She grabbed her bag, the gun, and fled into the snow, her trailer a tomb behind her. She hitchhiked south, her mind a storm of questions. Was Helen bluffing? Had the video resurfaced? She couldn't risk it. She had to keep moving, keep running. Days later, in a roadside motel, Clara saw it, a news report on a flickering TV. "Breakthrough in Eldwood case, video evidence points to fugitive." Her face, grainy, old, but hers, flashed on the screen. The anchor spoke of a woman wanted for multiple murders, a trail of bodies from Eldwood to Marrow's End. Helen hadn't lied. Clara turned off the TV, her hands steady despite the noose tightening around her. She wasn't done. She'd survived betrayal, killed for it, and she'd survive this. She slipped into the night, a shadow among shadows, her heart a fortress of ice. But the chase wasn't over. Helen's death had unleashed something bigger: cops, bounty hunters, a world hungry for her blood. Clara fought back, her kills piling up, each one a defiance, a scream into the void. She became a legend, a phantom, a name whispered in fear. Years passed, and Clara grew older, leaner, her face a map of scars and secrets. She stopped running one day, settling in a desert nowhere, a shack under a relentless sun. She didn't hide anymore, she waited. The world could come for her, and she'd meet it with a gun in her hand and a smile on her lips. Betrayal had made her. It had broken her, reshaped her, and set her free. She was no one's victim, no one's fool. She was Clara, the woman who'd turned trust into a weapon, and the world would never forget her name. Clara's shack sat on the edge of a desert called the Red Hollow, a wasteland of cracked earth and skeletal Joshua trees stretching toward a horizon that never seemed to arrive. The sun was a tyrant here, bleaching the world to bone, and the nights were cold enough to make her breath hang in the air like a ghost. She'd been in this nowhere place for 3 years, a speck in the vastness, living off canned goods and the occasional jackrabbit she'd shoot with her revolver. The gun was her constant now, a companion more loyal than any human had ever been. She'd stopped running not out of exhaustion, but out of defiance. The world had hunted her, cops, bounty hunters, journalists hungry for a headline, and she'd met them all with blood and silence. Her name was a myth now, whispered in dive bars and scrawled on wanted posters: Clara the betrayer, the cliffside killer, the woman who vanished. The stories grew wilder with each telling. Some said she'd killed a dozen, others 100, some claimed she was a vengeful spirit, others a cold-blooded psychopath. Clara didn't care. Truth was a luxury she'd abandoned long ago. The shack was her fortress, a ramshackle throne of warped wood and rusted nails. She'd rigged it with traps, tripwires tied to shotgun shells, broken glass scattered under the windows. She slept with one eye open, the revolver under her pillow, her senses honed to the slightest sound. The desert was quiet, but Clara knew quiet was a lie. It always had been. The first sign of trouble came with the dust. A cloud rose on the horizon one afternoon, faint but growing, a smear of red against the endless blue. Clara watched it from her porch, her hand resting on the gun at her hip. A vehicle, too far to tell what kind, but it was coming her way. She didn't move, didn't flinch. She'd faced worse than a lone driver in this empty place. The truck rolled up an hour later, a battered pickup coated in grime, its engine coughing as it stopped 50 yards from the shack. A man stepped out, tall, lean, with a weathered face and a rifle slung over his shoulder. He didn't approach, just stood there, hands raised slightly as if to show he meant no harm. Clara didn't buy it. No one came to Red Hollow by accident. "Who are you?" she called, her voice cutting through the dry air. "Name's Garrett," he shouted back. "I'm not here to fight. Just to talk." "Talk from there," she said, her grip tightening on the revolver. "What do you want?" He hesitated, then lowered his hand slowly. "I know who you are, Clara. I've been tracking you for a year. Not for the bounty, something else." Her stomach twisted, but her face stayed stone. "You've got the wrong person." "Don't think so." He took a step closer, testing her. She raised the gun, and he stopped. "I'm not a cop, not a hunter. I'm family." The word hit her like a slap. "I don't have family." "You did." His voice softened, but there was an edge to it. "My mother was your aunt. Ellen Voss, your real name, before you started shedding them. I'm your cousin." Clara's mind raced, sifting through memories she'd buried. Her mother's sister, Ellen, had left when Clara was a child, disappearing into a life of drugs and men. Clara hadn't thought of her in decades. "You're lying," she said, but doubt crept in. The name, Ellen Voss, hadn't been random. It had been a ghost she'd borrowed. "I've got proof." Garrett reached into his jacket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out a photo. He tossed it toward her, letting it flutter to the ground halfway between them. "Take a look." She didn't move at first, her eyes locked on him. Then, keeping the gun trained, she edged forward and snatched the photo from the dirt. It was old, faded, 2 women, one her mother, the other a younger Ellen, holding a baby. On the back, in her mother's handwriting, "Clara, 6 months." Her chest tightened. It was real. "So what?" she said, tossing it back. "Doesn't mean anything." "It does to me." Garrett's jaw tightened. "Ellen died 5 years ago. Overdose. Before she went, she told me about you, her sister's girl, the one who got away. I didn't care until I saw your face on the news. Figured I'd find you, see what's left of the family." "There's nothing left," Clara snapped. "Go back where you came from." "I can't." He took another step, his voice dropping. "You're not the only one running. I've got my own ghosts, and they're close. I need your help." Clara laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Help? You think I'm a savior? Look at me." "I see you," he said, unflinching. "I see what you've done. And I don't care. Blood's blood." The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Clara lowered the gun slightly, not out of trust, but curiosity. "What ghosts?" "Debt collectors," he said. "Bad ones. I owe money, big money, and they're not the kind to forgive. They tracked me to Varnal, then here. They'll kill me if they find me. And you, if you're with me." Clara's lips curled. "Let them try." Garrett studied her, then nodded. "So you'll help?" "I didn't say that." She holstered the gun, but her hand stayed near it. "You can stay the night. That's it. Then you're gone." He accepted, and they spent the evening in tense silence, him on the floor, her in a chair with the revolver across her lap. She didn't sleep, watching him, weighing his story. Blood's blood, he'd said. She didn't believe in blood anymore, only betrayal. The attack came at dawn. 3 trucks roared into the hollow, dust billowing, men spilling out with guns and shouts. Clara was ready. She dragged Garrett behind the shack, triggered the traps, shotgun blasts tore through the first wave, glass shredding their feet. She fired from the window, precise and ruthless, dropping 2 before they could reach the door. Garrett fought too, his rifle barking, but he was sloppy, panicked. "They're here for me," he yelled, ducking a bullet. "I told you." "Shut up and shoot," Clara snarled, reloading. The men were relentless, closing in, their voices a chorus of threats. She took out another, then felt the sting. A bullet grazed her arm, blood soaking her sleeve. She didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend. The fight ended in minutes, the desert swallowing the echoes. 6 bodies lay scattered, the trucks smoldering. Garrett was alive, panting, a gash on his forehead. Clara stood over the carnage, her arm dripping, her face a mask of calm. "You brought this," she said, turning to him. "You lied." "I didn't," he started, but she cut him off, pressing the revolver to his chest. "Don't." Her voice was ice. "You used me. Like Daniel. Like Trevor. Like Elise." "Clara, please," his eyes widened, pleading, but she'd heard please before. She pulled the trigger. He fell, a gasp escaping, his blood mixing with the dust. She didn't bury him. The desert would take him, like it took everything. She patched her arm, packed her bag, and torched the shack, watching the flames devour her last stand. The world had found her again, and she'd answered with fire. Clara walked into the horizon, the sun searing her back, her shadow stretching long and thin. She was alone now, truly alone. No family, no ghosts, no shackles. The hunters would come again, and she'd meet them, as she always had. Betrayal had forged her, broken her, and set her on this endless road. One day, they'd catch her. One day, she'd fall. But not today. Today, she was the storm, the blade, the reckoning. And the desert whispered her name.